Good morning, everyone. Welcome all our viewers. This is our first FIE webinar series on artificial intelligence and international humanitarian law. We're looking at navigating the crossroads of technology and security, developing international frameworks for international law, artificial intelligence, and autonomous weapons. My name is Adeke Mary Joy. I will be chairing this session. I am the head Peace and Security Unit, that is of Firdaus Initiative for Academic Excellency. And I am happy to co-chair with Ms. Alessia Teresa. Now, our agenda for today is as follows. First, we're going to have our opening remarks, and our opening remarks are going to be done by Mr. Abdukarim Aziz. Once we're done with our opening remarks, we shall then move on to Once we are done with our opening remarks, we shall then have introductory remarks by Professor Kasim Balarabe, and then we shall have an opening conversation by Mr. Swaleh Ahmed Wengo. Then we shall move to the first session of this webinar series. The first panel will be an interaction of artificial intelligence, ethics, and security. And in the first session, we shall have the following guest speakers. First, we shall have Dr. Manuel Brunner. Then we shall have Miss Leah Mehari Redai. Then we shall have Mr. Edward Millet. Our afternoon session will then be followed after a short break, where we shall be discussing harnessing artificial intelligence for modern conflict. In the second session, we shall have the following speakers: Major Nasser Drago, Miss Jolanda Pretorius, Dr. Foluke Mary, and lastly, Associate Professor Tajuddin Sani. And we shall have our closing remarks and vote of thanks by Mr. Akinumi John. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And at this juncture, I would like to invite Mr. Abdukarim Aziz to give us our opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Adeke Joy Mary. My opening remark will start by appreciating those individuals who have made it possible to have this webinar, starting from the invited guest speaker to the panelists and to our in-house team. Our invited guest speaker, Professor Kasim Balarabe from Jinda Global Law School, India. Thank you so much for being part of this. To the panelists, Dr. Manuel Brunner, Professor of Public International Law and International Material Law, Germany. Leah Mihari, International Material Law Lecturer at Addis Ababa University, Ethiopia. Mr. Edward Millet, an international law and Nigerian law legal advisor with United Kingdom government. Major Nasser Drago, a lawyer with Uganda People's Defense Forces. Jolanda Pretorius, a lecturer with University of Pretoria. Foluke Mary Daria, our own Assistant Director of Finance, who also doubles as a teaching staff at the University of New England in Australia. And the last but not the least, Associate Professor Tajuddin Sani, an Associate Researcher at Nelson Mandela University in South Africa. And to our own in-house team, Assistant Director of Programs, Mr. Swale Wengo, a lecturer at Prince Sultan University, Saudi Arabia. Assistant Director of Administrative, John Ayobami. The Head of Units, Leadership and Good Governance, Mr. Patrick Mamo from Kenya. Gender and Equality, Ms. Chichinda Marvelous from Zambia. And Research, Mr. Daniel Duom Kelai from South Sudan. Social Engagement, Mr. Enoch Tishom from Ethiopia. Peace and Conflict and Media Communication, Adeke Joy Mary from Uganda. Technology and AI Unit, Mr. Delai Shafi from Nigeria. And to our dedicated and committed intern, Alessia Tesoro from Italy. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, good morning. The Fredaus Initiative for Academic Excellence, under the leadership of our Assistant, has invited distinguished scholars and researchers across the world to have an intellectual discussion and engagement on how to navigate the crossroad of technology and security by developing an international legal framework for artificial intelligence and autonomous weapons. The question is, why is this discussion important? Our invited guest speaker and other panelists will definitely answer that question. But it is important to state that technological progress has brought about the emergency to take human lives without human control. And this represents an unprecedented threat to mankind. So as Fredaus family, our mandates includes organizing programs on how to make the world a better place and secured, irrespective of our technological advancement or our differences. And as humans, our progress in science and technology has reached an advanced stage where weaponization of artificial intelligence is now a reality. And the question is whether the autonomous weapon system is capable of adequately discriminating between civilian and military targets as provided for by enabling legal framework. In addition, artificial intelligence controlled weapon with a potential for mass destruction threatened the continued effectiveness of existing conventions. And autonomous weapon system equally raise many questions and concerns. And addressing them requires a multidisciplinary approach or research efforts and public discussion of this nature. And this is exactly why our invited scholars and researchers are invited to have this dialogue and discussion. Today's discussion and subsequent recommendations therefrom will go a long way in addressing some of the concerns raised regarding this webinar theme. And most importantly, it will provide guidance to all the stakeholders, policymakers, and the international community as a whole on how to put in place an enabling legal framework that will adequately address most, if not all, the concerns raised. On this note, I wish also fruitful intellectual engagement and deliberations, and on behalf of Fredaus Initiative Academic Excellence and the Board of Directors, I hereby declare this webinar open. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abdul Karim Aziz, for those opening remarks. At this juncture, I would like to invite Professor Kassim Balarabe to give the introductory remarks. Professor Kassim Balarabe is a professor of law at the Jindal Global Law School. He has a research interest in public international law, human rights, humanitarian law, refugee law, international criminal law, and international security issues. He is not only that, but he has more than a decade and a half of experience in academic research, humanitarian, legal, and policy development issues. He started his career as an associate at Aluko and Oyebode. He later entered the Federal Civil Service, serving as an Assistant Chief Legal Officer with the Nigerian Federal Ministry of Justice. He was a former Special Assistant to the Nigerian Federal Commissioner for Refugees and represented Nigeria as a delegate to the United Nations General Assembly. He was a research associate with the Public International Law and Policy Group in the Netherlands office, and he has also served as a resource for several governmental and non-governmental organizations on human rights, refugees, and humanitarian law issues. He also teaches for the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, that is at Oxford Brookes University in the United Kingdom, and also in Universitat Obeta de Catalunya, that's in Spain. Professor Balarabe holds a Bachelor of Laws from Ahmadu Bello University, a Barrister at Law from the Nigerian Law School, a Master of Laws from the University of Geneva, also a Master of Laws with a specialization in Law and Politics of International Security with Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, and a doctorate in law from Massachusetts University in Netherlands. Professor Balarabe, you are welcome.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to speak at this important webinar series on artificial intelligence and international humanitarian law. And good afternoon to everyone here. It is my great privilege to open this crucial discussion on the complex intersection of artificial intelligence, autonomous weapons, and international humanitarian law. As we gather virtually from all corners of the globe, from what I can see, from South Africa to Germany to Australia, it really underscores the truly global nature of these issues and the imperative for the international community to come together to address them. We stand at a pivotal juncture in history. The rapid advancement of artificial intelligence and the development of increasingly autonomous weapons systems present both immense potential and grave risk for the future of warfare and the global security as well. Like Pandora opening her proverbial box, the emergence of these technologies has unleashed forces that could reshape the very nature of armed conflict and the international legal frameworks meant to govern it. Today, we have assembled an esteemed group of experts in international law, human rights, military affairs, and technology to grapple with these weighty questions. Over the course of two panel discussions, we will examine the current state of artificial intelligence and autonomous weapons, the challenges they pose to international humanitarian law, and the urgent need to develop robust global governance frameworks. But first, let us take a step back and survey the technological landscape before us. In recent years, we have witnessed breathtaking advances in artificial intelligence across myriad domains, from healthcare to finance to transportation. Machine learning algorithms are now capable of analyzing vast drops of data, recognizing patterns, and making increasingly sophisticated decisions, in some cases with minimal human input or oversight. In the military sphere, artificial intelligence is already being harnessed to enhance everything, from intelligence gathering and analysis to logistics and mission planning. Perhaps most consequentially, artificial intelligence is enabling the development of autonomous weapon systems that can select and engage targets without meaningful human control. From sentry guns and underwater drones to swarm robotics, the specter of so-called killer robots looms on the horizon. To be sure, fully autonomous weapons that can operate completely independently of human decision-making remain for now the stuff of science fiction, I will say. But as the technology rapidly advances, that fiction inches ever closer to reality. Already, weapons with varying degrees of autonomy, such as loitering munitions and defensive systems for ships and land vehicles, are being developed and deployed by militaries around the world. Proponents argue that autonomous weapons could offer significant military advantages, minimizing risk to troops and enabling faster, more precise targeting. Critics, however, warn of a Pandora's box of moral, legal, and strategic risks, from the potential for indiscriminate harm and uncontrollable escalation to the abdication of human judgment and erosion of accountability on the battlefield. This brings us to the crux of our discussion today, the profound challenges that artificial intelligence and autonomous weapons pose to the laws of war as we know them. For over 150 years, international humanitarian law has sought to limit the brutality of armed conflict and protect civilians through a body of treaties and customary rules. At its core is the principle of distinction, which requires parties to a conflict to distinguish between combatant and the civilian population and to direct attacks only against combatants. Can an autonomous weapon reliably adhere to this bedrock principle, distinguishing between a combatant and the innocent civilian in the heat of battle through the fog of war? When an algorithm, rather than a human, is making targeting decisions based on data sets and machine learning, how can we ensure that it is capable of making nuanced judgments, accounting for context and the changing circumstances? There are also serious questions about proportionality and military necessity. Under international humanitarian law, any attack must be proportionate to the concrete military objective, with the expected civilian harm not exceeding the anticipated military advantage, as we know from the rules. How would an autonomous weapon operating at high speed and beyond human control assess proportionality? Would it default to lethal force more than a human in the loop system? Perhaps most fundamentally, the use of autonomous weapons raises philosophical questions about the role of human agency and the moral responsibility in decisions over life and death. When a machine kills, to whom do we ascribe responsibility? The programmer, the commander, the policymaker? Does meaningful human control over lethal targeting constitute, an ethical imperative, not just a legal one? These are not abstract debates. As the geopolitical landscape grows, more fractious and military spending rises, the pressure to develop autonomous weapons will only intensify. We are engaged in a high-stakes arms race with no clear rules of the road. That is why it is incumbent on the international community, through multilateral forums, expert discussions like this one, and proactive diplomacy to urgently tackle these challenges head-on. We must work to develop governance frameworks and the arms control regimes suited for the 21st century conflict. Some experts have called for a preemptive ban on fully autonomous weapons, akin to the prohibition on chemical and biological weapons or blinding lasers. Others advocate for more flexible regulatory approaches focused on preserving human control, akin to landmine restrictions. There are proposals for updated protocols to existing international humanitarian law treaties to account for autonomy in weapon systems. Any effective governance regime will require addressing key issues like the definition and the scope of autonomous weapons, the specific requirement for human control and judgment, standard for testing and review of artificial intelligence systems, and clear liability and accountability rules. There are also crucial adjacent issues around data security, technology transfer, and the potential for non-state actors to obtain autonomous weapons. Charting a path forward on these complex issues will not be easy. It will require grappling with competing values and priorities, from military necessity to human rights, innovation to regulations, national interest to collective security. Difficult trade-offs and political compromises will be inevitable, but the alternative, that is an unrestrained laissez-faire approach to these world-changing technologies, and simply too perilous to countenance. The stake for the future of warfare, global security, and human dignity are too high. Some may caution that trying to develop new international legal frameworks for vast moving technologies is tilting at windmills. How can the slow, painstaking process of multilateral negotiations and consensus building possibly keep pace with technological change? To that, I say we have no choice but to try. From Geneva Convention's restrictions on weaponry after the horrors of World War II to the Biological Weapons Convention during the Cold War, the international community has repeatedly demonstrated the power of collective moral will to rein in the destructive potential of new technologies. So to conclude, as the brilliant minds gathered here today engage with these issues, I urge us to embrace that same spirit of moral leadership and cooperative action. The path forward may be uncertain, but the destination is clear: a world in which the development of artificial intelligence and autonomous weapons is guided by ethics and law, not just technological determinism, in which human judgment and control is preserved in matters of life and death, and in which our international legal architecture evolves to meet the challenges of our time. With good faith effort, intellectual rigor, and committed diplomacy, I believe we can reaffirm the power of international humanitarian law to reduce sufferings, even and especially in a time of revolutionary technological change. Thank you, and I look forward to a robust discussion.
Thank you very much, Dr. Professor Balarabe. Just sorry for the inconvenience that is on our media side. I just kindly request that we end this session and move to a Google Meet session. And the link has just been posted. So I'll give about 1 minute for us to do a switch and everyone to get there. Thank you.